Really, we just want to be happy. When I think what we try and achieve with our communication, why we talk, why we use language, why we communicate with each other, why we don't just live by intuition, instinct, eat when we're hungry and sleep when we're tired, and fight and laugh and play. We just want to be happy, and we communicate to make our worlds better. So no matter what we're saying, whether it's words of anger or words of happiness or words of love or hate or peace or irony, everything is an attempt to make the world change. And in some sense, the intention would be happiness, satisfaction. It feels like as a human being we're not satisfied with enough to eat and enough to drink and enough to keep us warm and sheltered. We're not even happy with the things that people create around us. It seems like we want something more from the inside, but we don't look for it on the inside. We look in the outside world all the time because we just feel this unhappiness, this unsatisfaction, this lack. And we search for it on the outside, and we see reflections on the outside. We see things or people or activities that reflect what we see. That looks like it could make me happy. And sure enough, it leads the way. And so we begin to think that happiness can be found on the outside. And sure enough, there's ladders and doors and keys and swings and locks and bridges. But they're all just passages, rites of passage, just from A to B, going from a doorway. It's not a place where you stay. Happiness. And so it's almost necessary that we're unsatisfied. That's what makes life move forward, evolve, if you like. I think to understand that lack, that emptiness, that nothingness, that lack of satisfaction, that searching, that yearning, that wanting, that need. I think that's a certain mechanism that keeps us driving forward, like an open road that you want to be full, but it's open. You want to be there. We too often live in a state of statuses. I suppose a state in itself is always going to be a freeze frame of now, be it visual or memory. And when I look at the little things that happen to me through the day, they can be so small but meaningful. And then other times where I seek big adventures, very little has happened. So the big journey always took place on the inside. And we try and share it with each other. We try and share adventures. And some people are good at telling stories, some are not. So those who are good at telling stories seem to have the better adventures. When in actual fact, those who are more silent and quiet and observant live often much more intensely those moments. So it's not necessarily about trying to share your life with others in order to live it. You know, it's like kind of buying two different flavoured ice creams and not being able to taste the other person's flavour. Sometimes you can say, oh, try mine, oh, that I like the flavour of yours. But in this life, you don't get a chance to try the other person's flavour. You just have to accept the fact that you've got the flavour that you've got, and you can like it. I don't mean that like you can like it or leave it. You know, it's like the flavour we've been given. If we follow that flavour, if you follow what's destined for you, then surely that should bring you the most happiness. But if you're trying to follow what's destined for somebody else, then that would lead you anywhere else, potentially. I'm not talking about in time and space. You know, maybe somebody might be going a place in physical space where your journey takes place better in the mind, but you're on that journey. But maybe you're reading a book or writing a book that's got nothing to do with the journey, but you're with the person who wants to make the journey. So that way, two people can share the same, can be together, spend time together, but still have their own lives, you know. Because in essence, we try and have the same life, and we can. But only kind of when we realise that we let go of this idea of status, of trying to grab hold of life. You know, life it's like I've got this flavour and you've got that flavour, and we just have to trust in each other that we're having the same kind of experience. And the experience that's added through language and talk, you know, like I mentioned, you know, it's an addition to life. It's a human trait to create language and communicate through symbols, but over the years it's become refined to different national languages, and each language has its trait. But the application and usage of language in the first place amongst humans leaves us vulnerable to the creators of that language and the ambiguities that it causes. You know, different languages give different attitudes to its people, different kind of thought patterns, different mental vulnerabilities. You know, so the language controls a lot more of our lives than we actually realise, because we take it for granted. And that's where a big key lies. You know, we're looking for happiness. We're looking for balancing justice. Why is there no justice in the world? The same reason, because language. Because those who have access to intelligence and information and language have the power, and those who don't master the language are going to be left vulnerable. You know, so something so small yet so powerful, you know, the word. No matter which language it is, it's going to cause trouble, different kinds of troubles, you know, different languages, but it's all basically the same trouble. It's this trouble that as soon as you give a people ability to reflect reality into a communications medium, you know, a story, then all types of elaborations can take place, where I fly and I drink an ocean of water, and if somebody's like believes any of that, then reality becomes super reality. It becomes fiction, fantasy. Yeah, so now we've invented real words, real language, real ability to communicate, but in that communication we're not bound to the truth, we're not bound to reality. We're not forced to say tree when we see a tree. We're not forced to say green when we see the colour green. It makes it very easy to prefabricate reality, to tell somebody something that just isn't, that is not, and make it an is. And so we use words to improve our lives, to make us happier, to bring us closer. But essentially they cause just as many problems, if not more, because of the nature of reality, the nature of man's mind, to be a dreamer and not to realise, not to remember that this is a kind of a dream. We know it's a kind of a dream because as we get older, we see our perceptions change of the world. The bubble of a perception grows. We see more. So we make a picture of the world. Where do we make that picture from? We experience it directly through our carnal senses. You know, sight, sound, taste, smell, touch. We gather our senses, but as we live in a world where we go out less and less and watch more television and gain our information from a medium, a communications medium that only at this time offers audio and visual impressions, expressions, then it's limiting our experience to the outside natural world. Whereas years ago when we was children, we'd go out and touch a tree and taste the grass and smell the air. Now we can only see them on television. Of course, we never ever went to Africa and saw elephants. Well, you know, not everybody, but we saw them on TV, so it expanded our learning. But at the same time, it's a different part of learning. It's a different part of the brain. It's like, this is what I know to be natural and real and physical and in line with reality, and this is what I've gathered on information. Now our ability to do that, to discern between what's real and what is not necessarily real, that's so much more important. We see with the government taking on so much of our lives, you know, taking control and regulating so many facets of our lives, that we start to lose the fine line between what's law and what's regulation, what's legal and what's right and wrong. You know, so many laws, so many punishments. And if you think about it, human laws, positive laws, are posited. They're just there to help mankind, but they're not bound by any kind of right and wrong. Like a traffic lights, you know, red, green and yellow. They said red, green and blue. You know, why do we stop when it's red? We stop because we know to stop when it's red and go when it's green. That's what we've learned. The thing is, if the lights were green and there was like somebody in front of the road, it wouldn't give you the rights to run over that person. We see, you know, all these signs that we tend to obey, but we're not supposed to obey them. We're supposed to live. We're supposed to live by physical reality and not, you know, not like be solely guided by signs. You know, when we see a road sign that says 30 or a traffic light, it's there to help society. But then the pitfalls or the downfall or the downside of like the legal system is then punishments for things that are not really law. You know, like not stopping at a red light. So then if someone knows that they can't stop at a red light, the road was empty and they've got to be somewhere very quick in an emergency, a life-threatening emergency, you know, so what's the point? What's the point in stopping for a red light if it's an emergency and there's no cars? In fact, there is none. It would be negligence to stop for a red light in that case. You see, law's reversed. It never says down a dark alleyway, no killing. It never says it when you walk into a supermarket, no stealing. It doesn't say on the outside of a theatre, no idolatry. You know, these real sins, these real crimes against mankind, you know, these can't be written. These have to be known. You can't say to somebody, hey, no stealing. That has to come from inside a person. So all of the laws like traffic lights and street signs and acts and statutes are there for the running of the society. But when we're confronted with the authority that runs that society, we become overwhelmed, we lose trust and faith in our own ability to stick by the truth, and we take the threats and the coercion of the government seriously, instead of just saying, look, you know, I appreciate you having to act like a bully, but I'm in the right. So, you know, words. So words, we can tell, we learn language as a society, and we make rules in order for that society to coexist. For example, you know, to say that we try and keep the peace after 10 o'clock at night, so that the young children and babies can go to sleep, and so everybody's mutually happy with that. And those rules can get written down on a piece of paper so that nobody just changes them. We write them down, we agree on them, and that agreement on that written word gives that word power. The more people agree on that word, the more people you've got to argue with when you go against that word. So the written word gains authority. But then we live in a world where we don't really, you know, we're a bit confused about reality by now. We've been so tempted by all of the innovations of man and things that are supernatural that we've kind of forgotten the basics. And so therefore, society needs to change to control our behaviour. Not just tell us what we can do and can't do, but actually begin to control our minds, you know. How does it possibly do such a thing? Television, radio, news, propaganda, again, the word, books, storytelling. Creates a false image of the world. We take on false fears. Now, fear controls us the most. So there we have it, really, the three controlling factors of society that are so subtle that we'd rather make billboards and demonstration signs and go out protesting to those who we believe to be so-called powers that be, you know, so-called elites, so-called rulers and movers and shakers, you know. We think we can appeal to those people when the trick's been played on us and we're enemies to ourselves. The whole program is downloaded into each individual, you know, it runs off individuality. The state, the collective, is defined by individuality. A nation is based on the interests of the individual. So when we bring it right back to those three factors, them controlling factors, those factors that actually make our lives quite difficult, control our minds, ruin our relationships and all of these kind of things, is simply the language, the law, and the myth of the nation, our history, the history, national heritage, history. History, language and law, and they're all interconnected, and as much as language evolves, law evolves, the history evolves. There's a remedy to be found in there, in all fairness. The remedy is really to look at a world without words, or look at a world that doesn't need language. It's the first key. Imagine you go on holiday to a world, to a country that you can't understand the language. What are you any less or more of a person when you can't speak the language of the country you're in? You can't speak to anybody, you can't make any use of that language anymore. And so then coming back from that, understanding how much power we can get back if we begin to just relax, look at the language, and realise that just because somebody said something to you, it doesn't affect you. You know, words aren't magic tools. They're only as magic as the power you give to them. Sticks and stones can break your bones.